Set a reminder.
You are good to go.
All right, thank you, Bill. We'll start here in just a couple of minutes.
All right, let's just a couple more people to sign in here. We'll go ahead and start. Good afternoon. This listening session of the Montana Public Service Commission is called to order. I'm Commissioner Tony O'Donnell, Commissioner for District 2 of the Montana Public Service Commission. With me is Commissioner Randy Benocci, who, due to recent reapportionment, I used to cover all of southeast Montana, including all of Billings, all of Yellowstone County. Now it's split in two. So Commissioner Benocci is the new commissioner for part of Billings. So I don't know which part exactly. I can't describe it. For the record, the time is 6:05. The date is Wednesday, August 16. We are conducting this listening session from the headquarters of the Board of Oil and Gas Conservation in Billings, Montana, and by Zoom. Okay. The purpose of this session is to receive public comments on Northwestern Energy's 2023 Integrated Research Plan, which has been assigned Commission Docket Number 2022.11.102. The Commission encourages all commenters to review Northwestern's plan, which can be found on the homepage of the Commission's website under the What's Trending heading. Answers to many of your questions may be found in the detailed explanations and tables included in the plan. If you have not yet read the plan, you are, of course, still welcome to comment today, but note there will be 2 more sessions You can attend in person or online, and our legal counsel will be giving you those details. Please note that this listening session does not concern Northwest Energy's request for increased rates for electric and natural gas service, which has been assigned docket number 2022.07.078. I will ask all commenters to please stay on the topic of Northwestern's 2023 Integrated Resource Plan. I will, before asking Commissioner's Chief Legal Counsel, Lucas Hamilton, to summarize the docket, I'd like to ask, I noticed that reflecting the importance of this meeting, there are several current and former legislators or office holders here. I wonder if you could please stand and identify yourself.
Barry Brewster, currently represent House 44 in Billings.
Randy Valley, former Senator.
Former Representative Tom Barry, Yellowstone County, Russell Shell County.
I thought I saw someone else. Also, I wanted to mention because that Lisa Perry from Northwestern Energy Community Relations Specialist is here. Thank you, Lisa, for being here. I think I was asked to point out that the company is interested, as well as the commissioners are interested in the proceedings of this. So now,
Commissioner O'Donnell,
yes, sir.
can you note for the record that President Brown, I'm also attending, but virtually, please?
Well, I think that's been done, but thank you very much. I'm sorry, I was not aware that you were online. Thank you very much. So your listening session is coming up, is that correct?
Yeah, we'll be in Butte tomorrow night.
Okay, so for those of you who are interested, tomorrow night, and if you can connect that by Zoom to the commission website.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I will begin with a brief summary of the law on resource planning. Under statutes enacted by the Montana Legislature and administrative rules adopted by the Montana Public Service Commission, each public utility that provides electric service or natural gas service must prepare and file a long-range plan every 3 years. The long-range plan is known as an Integrated Resource Plan, or IRP. The planning process advances the state's interest in efficient utility operations, efficient use of utility services, and efficient rates. Among other elements, a public utility's Integrated Resource Plan must include an evaluation of the full range of cost-effective means for the utility to provide service to Montana customers, including conservation or similar improvements in the efficiency by which services are used. An annual electric demand and energy forecast, an assessment of the planning reserve margins and contingency plans for acquiring new resources, an assessment of the need for additional resources and the utility's plans for acquiring resources, the proposed process the utility intends to use to solicit bids for energy and capacity resources, and descriptions of at least 2 alternate scenarios that can be used to represent the costs and benefits of increasing amounts of renewable energy resources and demand-side management programs. The utility must fully explain, justify, and document its data and assumptions used to develop the plan. If the utility's plan meets the minimum filing requirements established in statute and by administrative rule, Montana law does not give the Commission the authority to formally reject the utility's plan. Instead, the law requires the Commission to review the plan, allow for public comment on the plan, provide at least 2 public meetings on the plan for the purpose of receiving public comment. The Commission may comment on the utility's plan and identify deficiencies in the plan. Comments from the Commission may not be construed as approval of any proposed resource. So to reiterate, the Commission does not approve or disapprove of the Integrated Resource Plan filed by Northwestern. The law simply requires the filing of the plan on which the Commission may comment, including by identifying deficiencies. Turning now to the present docket. On April 28, 2023, Northwestern filed its 2023 plan with the Commission. That plan evaluates different potential generation resources that can meet the needs of Northwestern customers over the next 20 years. According to the 2023 plan, the resources best suited to address Northwestern's needs are flexible natural gas generation and long-duration energy storage resources. The plan does not identify specific new resources for addition to Northwestern's resource portfolio. Consistent with statutory authority, the Commission is contracted with an independent consultant to assist the Commission in evaluating models used in the development of Northwestern's 2023 plan. The Commission issued a notice of opportunity to comment on May 26, 2023, and a notice of listening sessions on July 21st, 2023. Although the law requires the Commission to hold 2 public meetings on the plan, the Commission has decided to hold 5 separate meetings on this plan. This is the 3rd of the 5 meetings. Previously, the Commission held a listening session in Great Falls, Montana on August 14th, and in Helena yesterday, August 15th. The Commission will also hold meetings on August 17th, starting at 6 p.m. in the Butte Silverboat Public Archives, located at 17 West Port Street in Butte, Montana, and on August 22nd, 2023, starting at 6 p.m. in room 340 of the Missoula College Learning Center, located at 1205 East Broadway Avenue in Missoula, Montana. The public is welcome to comment at any of the upcoming listening sessions, either in person or remotely. To sign up to participate remotely, please contact the Commission by 5 o'clock on the day before you intend to provide comment. You may also email pschelp, that's pschthelp@mt.gov, or call 1-800-646-6150. As stated in the Commission's May 26th Notice of Opportunity to Comment, the deadline for public comment is August 28, 2023. The Commission and its staff will review all timely public comments when preparing its own comments on the 2023 plan. Mr. Chair, that concludes my summary of this matter.
Thank you, Mr. Hamilton. We're here today to listen to public comments. As a result, this meeting will not have a question and answer format. The Commission and its staff will not be commenting today or answering questions. If certain technical questions arise, I may defer to the Commission's legal counsel. Please be mindful of your use of time so that others have adequate time to comment. Comment should be delivered professionally and respectfully. Commenters should please confine their remarks to the specific topic of the listening session, which relates to Northwestern's 2023 Integrated Resource Plan. The Commission now invites members of the public to comment. Please remember to speak into the microphone, which is here. State and spell your name, and state where you are from, just the county or the city. You don't need addresses. Please also identify any organization on whose behalf you are speaking, if applicable. We will now begin with commenters in the room. Any commenters in the room? Please come forward. Yes, go ahead.
Testing. I'll go first and get it over with. Thank you for listening.
The future belongs to the bold.
My name is Chris Glenn, spelled Glenn. I am from Montana. My family came here in the 1860s, and we've been here a long time. I'm not going to say I'm an expert in the plan. I tried, but I'm just a person. So I just want to say my impression is that Northwestern appears to be fixated primarily, or maybe exclusively, on fossil fuel-produced energy, and there's a lot of other sources that are lower cost and less harmful to us living and working around them. So from the outside, what it looks like to me is that they're choosing sources that maximize their profits. And they've said they don't have enough power for the future, and I accept that at face value, but there are other options in building the fossil fuel there. So I'm thinking specifically as a Billings person whose father was the air pollution control director in the 70s in Yellowstone County, when Billings was one of the most polluted cities in America, and someone with asthma, you hear me coughing, it's asthma, I'm not sick, but it makes it hard to breathe. And so putting a plant that's a win from us is very concerning to me. Talking about other solutions, if we don't have enough energy, which I hear, then are they advocating for reduced consumption? Because the cheapest energy is reducing the demand. I don't know if it's there, I couldn't find it, I looked, but reducing demand, are they helping their ratepayers and customers to make their houses more efficient? And then also, we have solar panels, and we generate pretty much all the energy that we need. And I'm really happy about that, and I'm happy to loan them Northwestern our energy, and I'm really happy to pay them for use of their services and their infrastructure. I think it should be fair for both. But if more property owners install solar panels, that would reduce the demand, especially on these hot days when everybody wants to run their air conditioner if they're lucky enough to have one. Is Northwestern advocating for that? Are they helping? From what I see, it seems like that they're not. So I would like them to do that. And then kind of using the argument, we don't have enough power without taking advantage of these options that reduce the demand and then put up their own solar panels. It's kind of like saying, my family's hungry and I need different food, but the only grocery store is saying, well, all we offer is steak and caviar, sorry. If you can't get that, then, well, I guess you just have to not have it. It's a bad analogy, a horrible analogies, but hopefully you can get the gist. Another question I have is, I know they need more power. Are we doing everything to use our energy sources here in Montana? Fiber Energy Keepers is selling their energy outside Montana, but then Northwestern has to buy energy from outside Montana. Why are some people selling energy outside Montana and Northwestern buying money from outside Montana? That doesn't make sense. I don't understand. And why can't we just keep it in Montana? And if they do sell that money out of state, because we have to pay for those plants, we have to pay for that plant we want to put into Laurel, and if they sell it out of state for lots of money, because I hear that out of that peaking energy is expensive, do we get any of that money back? Do we get reimbursed? Or do we get a credit somehow? And then, are they being innovative? Like, you've got Yellowstone Park, and this might sound crazy, and the geothermal, but I have heard that Colstrip has a lot of geothermal energy. And it's got all the power lines and all that. Is there any way to work with that? I really encourage Northwestern and the PSC to partner with Montana to help us find innovative ways that we can use all of our natural resources, land, the water. You've got lots of space, the wind, all those different things, not just to focus on what, to think outside the box and not be stuck in fossil fuels. Thank you very much for listening.
Just add something here without commenting on going apart from the plan. I think Energy Keepers, that's a good point, is a project is owned by the State of Scoopnai Indian tribe. They are not regulated in any way by the Public Service Commission.
Yes, thank you.
Next person.
Thank you for holding 5 sessions instead of just the 2 that was required. I figured I was in the right place when I was following the PSC 1 license plate on my way here. I'm Lori Byron, Loribyron, and I live in Hardin, but we're moving to Hardin County, and we are Northwest Energy people. I'm the past president of the Academy of Pediatrics, and I also have a degree in energy policy. If I gave the diagnosis of cancer to one of my patients, I wouldn't expect them to just totally believe me, even if they really liked me. I would suggest that they have a second opinion. And sometimes people even a third or fourth opinion. So let's think about a family that decides to get 100 opinions, and 99 of them say this patient has cancer. And one doctor said, no, I don't think they do. I don't think you do. You don't have to do anything. That's sort of like the situation right now. As I understand it, every utility company in the country, except for one, has decided that they shouldn't invest anymore in coal. And that one is our company. Even more concerning is the fact that this IRP, that nobody has access to the modeling that was done. And that would be like a doctor trying to make a diagnosis without examining the patient or having lab or x-ray or anybody else's medical records. You just can't do it. There's no way to make the diagnosis. And it doesn't consider, there's been a very good recent study done that shows that moving forward in Montana, we could meet our energy needs with increased energy efficiency, like the First Lady said, and battery storage with renewables. And that's not being considered at all. That also doesn't consider that multiple real U.S. state examples show that pushing forward with renewables actually gives us better jobs and a better economy. So why does the doctor care about that? Well, we care a lot about that because of what's called social determinants of health. So that the 3/4 of the things in your life besides going to the doctor's office that actually determine your health. Your zip code, the kind of food you eat, the exercise you do. And one of the most important social determinants of health is a family having a job and a livable income. If this IRP is really the plan going forward, the families across Montana will have decreased job security and increased utility bills. They deserve a discussion by our Public Service Commission after you all have had all the data available to you. Thank you very much.
Margaret Beeson, B-E-E-S-O-N. I'm in Missouri, Montana. I'm also a Northwest Energy customer for over 30 years. Appreciate that you're holding these sessions that are willing to hopefully transmit some of our opinions to Northwest Energy. I'm a healthcare practitioner as well, and so I'm concerned about the quality of our health and all that the fossil fuels contribute to. And I also was disappointed not to see in the plan any sort of forward thinking about what the plans are to incorporate all sorts of other wonderful energies that we have access to. And I'm always disturbed when I see this our expansion to the west end, building after building, and no solar, with all the sun and the elements that we have here in England. So I would like to see some leadership on the part of our utility company to provide us maybe ways that we can save by all the, especially businesses, can save, there's a word for that, to be able to afford to add other ways to generate electricity. So I'd like to see that Northwest Energy is leader in this for our community. I think that's really, there's nothing in that plan that talks about the future. It's really a three-year plan, and more. And why are we not seeing anything about the opportunities that they partner with our community?
My name is Colin Campshire. I'm from Billings. To continue with the medical analogy, my impression of this plan is as if they're using medical technology from the 1920s, not looking to what has developed since. That being said, when I read the plan, I thought that they did not pay enough attention to modern advancements, nor any alternatives to traditional methods of energy generation. I don't believe that fossil fuels have a long political or legal life. I see no sense in investing in new generation from fossil fuels. There are too many other alternatives, and I don't think NWE has paid attention. Thank you.
Before you leave, could you spell your last name over the record, please?
A-A-M-P-S-C-H-R-O-E-R.
Welcome.
Good evening, Commissioners. My name is Adela Honor, last name A-W-N-E-R. I live in Billings. I've lived here for 35 years, and I do remember when Montana had some of the lowest energy rates in the whole country. So I did look at the executive summary of the 2023 Integrated Resource Plan, and what I kept on seeing, what the thing that stuck most in my mind was the words on demand, and Northwestern Energy talked about being able to provide reliable power on the coldest winter days and for a stretch of winter days. And I understand that is important, but I also understand that peak power is the most expensive power that there is. And while there seemed to be continuing focus in the executive summary on this on-demand power, those words were used over and over again, I didn't see much of anything in the way of that option, the options, all possible options that were mentioned. So reducing demand, using less power, finding ways to do that. I didn't see that in what I read, and I didn't see use. There was an allusion to being emission-free by 2050, but those were just words. There seems to be little actual movement in that direction, and and renewables are now cheaper actually than building an on-demand plant that can handle peak energy needs. Even buying power on the open market is cheaper than the peak power that it seems to me Northwestern Energy keeps on saying it needs. And it seems that they keep on saying that Montanans want this peak on-demand power, and I don't, and I think there's a lot of other people who also don't. And aside from all the other issues that come with building big, new, expensive coal or gas-fired power plants, they're simply just unaffordable. I am retired. I live on a fixed income. In my retirement, I would like to enjoy things in life that I wasn't able to do while I was working, and I don't want to see a huge chunk of my income go to pay power bills. I don't want to pay for power plants that have way more negatives than they have benefits for me. I think there's a lot of Montanans who are in a similar position to me. I just simply can't afford the rates that we can look at history and be pretty clear on what our rates would be with more new on-demand peak power plants. And we keep on hearing how more and more families are struggling financially. And about the last thing that Northwestern Energy ratepayers need is very, very high, greatly increased power bills that come from building essentially unnecessary power plants where that peak demand is not even being used most of the time, but we're still paying for that plant. So thank you very much. Appreciate the opportunity to speak to you tonight.
Thank you.
Good evening, Commissioners. My name is Mary Fitzpatrick, Fitzpatrick, and I live in Billings. I've lived here for 40 years. Northwestern Energy's 2023 Integrated Resource Plan is too little, too late, too fantastical and self-contradictory, too opaque, and too expensive. Too little. Northwestern Energy should be investing in renewables like wind, solar, enhanced geothermal generation, and all kinds of storage, in demand-side management, and distributed generation like leasing rooftops for solar rather than building more fossil fuel generation. We ask the PSC to require that Northwestern Energy implement an energy efficiency financing program for customers and to complete the deployment of demand-side management. too late. The 2050 date for net zero is insufficient and too late. Insufficient because the latest IPCC report warns us that by 2050, we must achieve zero emissions, not the same as net zero. They don't even offer a plan for their net zero goal, just the opposite. The company plans to keep building fossil fuel generation through 2035. That means they will belch out carbon dioxide until 2065 and likely beyond. They offer no plan to eliminate methane leaks from their methane burning plants and pipelines. What do they even mean by net zero emissions? We asked the Public Service Commission to require Northwestern to commit to a goal of zero coal and zero methane emissions by 2030 and draft a plan with specific strategies to meet that goal. It's too fantastical and too self-contradictory. The company is supposed to provide reliable energy at least cost for ratepayers. This plan does not even evaluate the cost of alternatives to building more fossil fuel generation. Although their mention of the net zero goal seems to be a nod toward climate change, the plan actually increases their emissions. The plan also fails to account for the social and financial costs of carbon and methane pollution in their plan, especially in a scenario in which Colstrip is not retired until 2042. The costs incurred by the increased frequency and severity of climate-fueled floods, droughts, and extreme weather events to farmers, ranches, businesses, and the public should be accounted for. Likewise, the PSC should require Northwestern Energy to account for the social and financial costs of increased health risks resulting from fossil fuel plants, including the tons of annual carcinogenic and other serious pollution that would be emitted by the Laurel Generating Station, a designated major source of hazardous air pollutants. The plan anticipates more of these dangerous and expensive plants. This is not a path to zero emissions, nor to least cost. The plan is too opaque. Northwestern Energy fails to consider a scenario in which they invest in a combination of renewables and energy storage in their portfolio. Our customers to know that their utility is choosing least cost power sources when all scenarios are not properly considered. The PSC should commission an unbiased, credentialed, and experienced third-party study to model renewable scenarios that include battery storage. Northwestern Energy has a documented history of cooking the books to favor expensive energy sources that benefit shareholders. The plan is too expensive. Northwestern Energy chooses building fossil fuel generation over renewables and efficiency because that is best for shareholders, but not for customers. The plan does not take into account the financial supports for emissions-free generation and efficiency available through the 2022 Inflation Reduction Act. The PSC would be remiss in not having these supports included in a third-party evaluation. Northwestern Energy's plan for our energy future promises higher energy bills, more pollution, and disastrous consequences for our climate. This plan is designed to increase profits for Northwestern's executives and shareholders, while ratepayers, indeed all Montanans, pay the cost with increasing electricity bills and serious health costs. This month's held decision struck down the laws by which the state sought to excuse itself from fulfilling the affirmative responsibility the Montana Constitution imposes on the state and each person to, quote, maintain and improve a clean and healthful environment. This includes the PSC and Northwestern Energy. Northwestern Energy is allowed to implement anything like a 2023 plan. They and the PSC could find themselves involved in yet another lawsuit brought in defense of our constitutional rights.
Thank you. That microphone will stand down all the way down to
Good evening. My name is Laurel Urlacher. I'm a resident of
Tell your last name, please.
Australia, URLACH. And frankly, I believe we deserve better. Sacrificing our health and environment for profit is frankly the future is clean, renewable energy. If we don't adapt along with the rest of the world, we will be left behind. Overpaying for a limited resource, our health and our family's health scores off, and our home dirty and toxic. We have a right to a healthy environment, and that right should be ignored. Please take our concerns seriously, and thank you for your time.
My name is Don King. With that, I'm here speaking on my behalf. Person. Coalition for Safety and Justice. And we're taking a little different bent on this. Who knows? I may not survive the parking lot. Mom and Dad got divorced. I ended up in California. I know. Don't shoot me. And during my time there, we were told, don't use paper bags. Don't do that. Switch to plastic. Otherwise, we're going to have an ice age by 1988. I invested in ski stock. Didn't work out. Ice age didn't come. But what we did was, if you look in California, Altamont, California, they invested in wind. It's the biggest pinwheel factory you've ever seen. None of it works. None of them are functional. I talked my son into becoming an environmental engineer. Well, and he liked that idea. I talked to him about the pinwheels in Ottawa. He said, Dad, this is the way they are. The wind blows too high, you got to shut them down. If you shut them down, it takes 2 weeks to start them back up. They're not as efficient. What makes them efficient is government grants. Oh, that's taking money out of my left-hand pocket, maybe putting it over here by the time I'm done, but I'm missing the change in the transfer. It does, on behalf of the coalition, their concern is several things. One, battery power, that electric vehicles, are very expensive and creates an economic drain on people that do not afford a $100,000 car. Plus, it will raise electricity rates. So our senior citizens, like has been talked to, will have increased costs. I don't want to pay more. I don't think they have the ability to pay more. With battery storage, well, that doesn't work really either. The technology is not there and is not projected to be there for another 10 to 15 years. Lithium remains to be one of the most highly dangerous toxic chemicals you have, even after it's been reduced to a refined level after recycling, what they call black cake. It has a longer half-life than uranium from a nuclear plant. On top of that, to make a battery, you need cobalt, and you need others, but specifically cobalt, which comes from Africa, which is mined by kids as young as 5 years old or as old as 25. They don't last much longer. So all we're doing is we're building batteries on slave labor. Because once that is mined, it goes to China, where the Uyghurs, which are slaves, and others, such as Tibet, Tibetans and such, make those into batteries so we can power our drills. Slavery is slavery. And all we do is we promote slavery by promoting those things. Plus, batteries are also dangerous, also with electric cars. In Florida, during the hurricane, and there was flooding, electric cars were blowing up by the minute, just blowing up every 5 minutes, because if the battery hits water, it tends to overheat or short out, and it's impossible to put out. New York has had over 20 fatalities because people's scooters all of a sudden heat up and burn their apartment down. In between the toxic smoke and the intense heat from that fire, no one was able to get out alive. That's electric cars, electric vehicles. And even I would warn people not to plug in their little Ryobi battery things unless you're going to use that battery right away, because that battery will overheat. The lithium battery must be 35 degrees, 40 degrees to even charge. Well, in Montana, how many days in the winter are we that warm? Below that, you put them on a charger, they must be heated up by that charger to accept the charge. Now, Consumer Reports, which doesn't have a dog in this race, stated that their electric cars are the most inefficient things in the world. Because at below 60 degrees, or 45 degrees, they lose over 60% of their charge, which means if I have a 300-mile range, I may be able to get to Laurel on a single charge, and then I'm going to take 4 hours to charge it up. I can't get past Bozeman. And trust me, I appreciate it. I get some little money off a charger in Bozeman. Thank you very much. I appreciate you guys running out of electricity. But they're inefficient. So not only that, I look at this plan. Is it a perfect plan? No, but it's realistic. I can get in my car, take 5 minutes to fuel up, and I can get all the way to Helena. I can't do that with an electric car. In case of emergency, like Maui, that just happened, many of those people couldn't escape because they didn't have their car charged. I can jump in my gas car and I can go a long way. So there is that. Temperature changes all the time. But this hits reality. Natural gas burns cleanly. Coal, we've got coal in the ground. With the scrubbers, the technology, it's incredibly clean. To deny the ability to use our God-given resources in this plant and to exchange them for wind is only good when it blows because we can't store it because the battery storage isn't there. I looked into solar power for my home. It wasn't efficient. It would pay for itself in 25 years. Well, I'm 60, maybe by the time you put me in the ground, I'll have the damn thing paid off. That's not efficient. If we start going this way and we take out these minerals, where are we going to go? And I know there was this court case. And maybe we can get more efficient. And I would applaud efficiency. For those that don't want to increase our power load, don't want peak energy, I think just look at California. I go down there for business quite a bit. During the summer, they've had 7 different notices for weeks going, please don't charge your electric car because we don't have enough energy. You'll overload the grid. And the last time it overloaded the grid, it was a town called Paradise in Northern California. Beautiful area. Ashes. Is that what we want here? Who does that help? No one. So why are we trading natural gas, which at least we have the technology to clean up, for something we don't have the technology to clean up? Geothermal, great idea. Works fine, and there's a lot of good plans. That's a 10-year project away. Right now, I need my light bulb. And peak energy happens. If you don't want to have peak energy, sell your air conditioner. Get a bicycle. Turn off your TV. Get rid of your refrigerator. Get rid of your dishwasher. And get rid of the latest thing that's supposedly going to kill us is hot water heaters. And this is not good for people that are low income. The coalition and my position. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Next, please.
Mr. Chair, I would respectfully ask that we.
Okay, sure. Thanks, please.
Good evening, Commissioners. My name is Edward Barta, and that's B-A-R-T-A. Being kind of a 73-year-old fellow, I kind of look at things a little bit more simply. And for me, right now in this room, there is a huge elephant. And not only is it a huge elephant, but it is a bull, and it is not very happy. And what I'm speaking about is a changing climate. I see this particular plan, and I see how timidly we're looking at renewables. It just amazes me with all that's going on in the world right now that we're not being much more aggressive in terms of our approaching renewables. It seems as though we're being stopped in this age pretty regularly with what's happening with our climate. And for me personally, one of the things that I'm really worried about is our Montana rivers. I've been a fisherman for pretty much all my life, and even though I say I'm not a great fisherman. I usually catch fish. But if you've been out in rivers in Montana lately, there aren't a lot of fish around right now. And of course, multiple reasons for that. One of them certainly has to do with lower river flows and higher water temperatures. So I think until we address the elephant in the room, I think this is not the time to be timid when we approach climate, when we approach renewables. This is the time to embrace them. I do believe the technology is there. I just think it takes a more aggressive stance, and I do not feel as though Northwestern Energy is being very aggressive in that pursuit. Thank you.
Commissioners, my name is Barbara Gulick, Gulick, and I live in Billings. I believe that it is incumbent upon every business that implies to incorporate, to demonstrate how the company will provide a public benefit. Perhaps once upon a time, Northwestern Energy actually took their providing a public benefit seriously and did provide its customers with reliable energy at a reasonable cost with a reasonable return to its investors. I now believe that this is no longer the case. Although I have no complaints about the service its employees provide in restoring service when something goes wrong, and although those employees whom I read about in the little newsletter that comes with my monthly bill and whose recipes I sometimes use appear to be good people and upstanding citizens, I find Northwestern Energy's business plan to be not only appalling, but also immoral. For energy sources, it relies heavily on polluting and climate change-inducing fossil fuels, while ignoring less expensive, non-polluting, and renewable energy sources. This, coupled with the cost of building the infrastructure needed to produce this air, land, and water polluting, climate change inducing fossil fuel source energy, raises the cost of using Northwestern Energy products for the average ratepayer, and for reasons I don't pretend to understand, attracts additional investment and a higher rate of return on investment. I submit that Northwestern Energy no longer exists as a public benefit, and that its 2023 Integrated Resource Plan should be rejected by the Public Service Commission. Thank you for listening.
Thank you. Welcome.
Thank you, Commissioners. I'm Robert Byron, spelled B-Y-R-O-N, from Bighorn County. Yes, Dr. Lori Byron's husband. I also am a physician and internist, and have been practicing in southern Montana for almost 35 years. Taking the healthcare approach too is our air quality in the United States is better now than it was 25 years ago because of the Clean Air Act and a lot of other things. Despite that, estimates are anywhere from 60,000 to as many as 300,000 premature deaths every year because of air pollution. Now, as a physician, I'm used to people coming in with medical conditions, say a heart attack, and you can't fix everything. Well, if a 40-year-old male comes in with a heart attack, well, what can we do? Well, we can give some treatment, might be able to help his cholesterol, but if we don't counsel him about smoking and let him go on and smoke, then that's negligence. And so it is here, is we see more and more studies pointing to the effects of air pollution on human health. In fact, there's another one this week which connects it even more strongly with dementia. We see fetal maternal impacts, we see more heart attacks, strokes. The evidence is very strong. And Northwest Energy's IRP, by not considering the impacts of emphasizing polluting fuel sources and minimizing, almost to exclusory, renewable sources, is tantamount to negligence. And the PSC should encourage them to consider those, and do everything in your power to stop that. Thank you.
Next.
Honorable Commissioners, my name is Ed Ulick, last name spelled G as in George, U-L-I-C-K. I'm a Billings resident, and I'm giving testimony on behalf of the roughly 4,000 member families of the Northern Plains region. Northern Plains, we want our community to transition to reliable and affordable clean energy sources like efficiency, solar, and wind, and we need to do it quickly to protect the places and people we love. Recognize that regulated investor-owned utilities need to have a return for their investments. We think returns should be modest, as the monopoly privilege they've been granted shields them from competition, and the price guarantees they are granted by the PSC shield them from risk. Furthermore, regulated investor-owned utilities have an obligation to serve the interests of the public, whether it be residential, commercial, or industrial. The public needs and deserves power generation that's cost-effective, that's reliable, that protects Montana's air, land, and water, and climate, which are all the ultimate source of our wealth here in Montana. And we also need that to be fair. By these criteria, Northwestern Energy's integrated resource plan failed miserably. Reviewing the criteria, their plan for meeting their Montana customers' needs is not cost-effective. Northwestern Energy is going all in on power generated from Colstrip, which is among the most expensive power in its portfolio. Across the country, utilities are dramatically moving away from coal-fired power plants because they're very expensive. Nationwide, according to investment research company Lazard, even the power from coal plants that are fully depreciated is more expensive at about $52 a megawatt hour than utility-scale solar and onshore wind, which, there's a range that starts at about $24 per megawatt hour. PSC filings also show that Colstrip is much more expensive than the solar and wind resources in Northwestern Energy's portfolio. The plan also doesn't have anything to shade peak loads in there. So demand-side management is a far less expensive approach to providing end-user value than building, generating capacity to meet peak loads. Otherwise, you just have a lot of plants that are just idle for a long time. There's nothing in the plan for shifting peak demand to times of less demand by using storage facilities like the proposed Gordon Butte pumped storage facility. Moreover, going all in on Colstrip and new methane gas plants exposes Montana ratepayers to risk from potential carbon fees that seek to give a price to the considerable social costs of climate change. It also, their plan does not provide a reliable source of power. Colstrip has proven itself not to be a reliable source in the last decade. It's been down times when it was most needed and for the various repairs. And most definitely does not protect Montana's air, land, water, and climate. At a time when nearly every entity in the country is working hard to reduce their carbon emissions, to lessen the risk to our climate and life as we know it, Northwestern Energy is planning to increase emissions, threatening the lives and livelihoods of all Montanans. Northwestern Energy is adding fuel to the fires that are burning up our crops, rangelands, and forests. I believe this is morally and ethically reprehensible. But it's also not fair. This plan continues a recent pattern seen throughout Montana of sticking residential customers with the dramatically rising cost to pad the walls of out-of-state shareholders. If not regulated, a monopoly corporation is the worst possible mechanism for delivering value to Montanans, as there is no market forces to reduce waste, to drive innovation, and deliver value. And in the absence of risk, there is nothing to prevent them for making very poor investments, since ratepayers pick up the tab instead of shareholders and executives. And there is only a bottomless appetite for profit. So the job that you hold as commissioners, the PSC, is a very critical one, for which you're the only bulwark to their greed. You are the entity that can bring the balance back to ratepayers. And we are counting on the PSC to look out for the interests of Montanans. Fortunately, your recent track record hasn't always been that great. We still have, of course, the rate case I will not talk about, but that is still out there. But there has been the recent past when solar developers were looking to bring cost-effective power to the grid. The PSC set unfairly low rates for them, much lower than the cost recovery that Northwestern Energy has in its own system. Monopolies hate competition, and Northwestern Energy relied on the PSC to clear the field of any competition. Unfortunately, a lot of ratepayer or taxpayer resources were spent defending the decision in court before justice prevailed. Please reverse this trend and prove that the PSC actually does look out for the interests of your constituents. To this end, we request the PSC require a reputable, experienced third party look at things, and I hear that's proposed. That's great. I know 3 years ago when Synapse Energy Economics was able to crack open the model that the black box that there weren't any assumptions about, it was very enlightening. And they found that Northwestern Energy was not even close to providing the most cost-effective, reliable, or fair approach to providing power to Montana. Demand that Northwestern Energy accounts for the social and financial costs of increased health risks resulting from fossil fuel plants, including the tons of annual carcinogenic and other serious pollution that would be emitted by the Laurel Generating Station, a designated major source of hazardous air pollutants, and require Northwestern Energy to commit to a goal of zero coal and zero methane emissions by 2030, draft a plan with specific strategies to meet that goal. Northwestern has announced a plan to net zero emissions by 2050, but has not released meaningful details about how this will be accomplished. Finally, require that Northwestern implement an energy efficiency financing program for customers to increase their deployment of demand-side management. Thank you very much for your time and consideration.
Thank you. Next speaker. Referred 3 times to people. So welcome.
Hi, I'm Lily Morris, L-I-L-I-M-O-R-R-I-S.
What do you do?
Oh, I'm zoning.
Thank you.
Just wanted to, again, what's the Northwest. I think we should look more into renewable resources such as wind and solar and even just geothermal possibly. The plan fails to address the longevity of its energy source as well as the well-being of the community it serves and the globe at large. As we dig up and burn non-renewable resources, not only do they become more scarce, a cost push to the consumer, they also contribute to the global problems we are facing to our climate. We are experiencing a record year for extreme weather events. Only increases our energy demands, and as we burn up these non-renewable resources, we're burning. We no longer afford the short-sightedness that has led to the problems we are facing, especially from a 20-year proposal plan. We can no longer use short-term profits and turn a blind eye to the long-term resiliency and reliability of the systems we have established. We're burning up these projects and are causing harms to the health and safety of the citizens. Time to say that enough is enough. Northwest Energy may not single-handedly be at fault for the climate crisis. It is time that we take responsibility for our part in the problems at hand. We need to change our approach, and change has to start somewhere. Thank you.
Excuse me for my alarm going off right there. I have to take a hand over to her right now.
My name is Christy Drake, and I'm from Billings, and I represent no organization.
So the ordinary way?
CRAKE, just like the mailbox. With all due respect, I'm going to tell you the rumor that's going on around the state of Montana, and that is that the PSC is biased favorably towards Northwestern Energy. In fact, one of the members of your commission actually spoke at my Rotary meeting a couple of months ago, touting the benefits of coal. From the testimony of all of these wonderful people this evening who have taken their time because they're passionate about not wanting coal and methane, and likely from the meetings in other Montana communities, you see that your communities that you represent do not want the methane and coal energy that is being proposed in Northwestern Energy's plan, and that they continue to choose. We all know that coal and methane do not promote a healthful environment. So I ask you to please give us the confidence that you are not in the pockets of Northwest Energy, and insist that that company includes clean, renewable energy in its integrated resource plan. Thank you.
You all this evening. My name is Erin Anderson, spelled Anderson. I grew up in Billings, and I recently moved back from Boston about a year ago. My master's in intercultural youth and family development from the University of Minnesota. I live over on the east side of downtown in the Bird District, right across from the tracks from the refinery. I'm going to take this in a different way that people haven't been speaking about it. My neighbor was shot in the head and killed this past spring. As a yoga teacher, I believe in nonviolence and non-harm. And my background is working underserved youth and families. And there's an important tie to companies who bring all aspects of wellness into their consideration for investment. In 2019, the University of Minnesota conducted a study where the data from the study was gathered from the SCI's National Incident-Based Reporting System, the Environmental Protection Agency's air quality system. Daily pollution levels were determined based on the amount of fine particulate matter and the ozone in the air. The study found that increases in air pollution levels raise the risk of violent criminal behavior, such as assault. And air pollution did not increase the risk of nonviolent crimes, which are crimes that are not involved force or.
Excuse me, Ms. Anderson, based upon the point that Senator McGowan made, your remarks seem to not be on the IRP itself. Do you favor that?
Just give me a moment.
It's very, very
Yeah,
interesting.
I mean, if you
pointed out.
give me a moment, I'll move around to it. The results were consistent across different community types, including regions of different socioeconomic status, racial diversity, and age. In other words, this is not the community driving this relationship. I also want to point out there are a few children present in this room. And as pollution rises and as violence rises with it, the people that will be most affected are our children and our grandchildren. We continue to generationally leave a mess that I believe that we are bright and educated and savvy enough to resolve. This is about innovative and forward thinking, exploring all options, but let's be honest, business is about creating, and city government is about creating the right relationships. We need to work in risk assessment for our bank. I think a lot of times we think about business and politics as a space of taking a loss, or the financial loss in the moment can be an exponential gain for what our children and grandchildren will have to deal with in the future. The space that we've been operating from it, I believe, to be a selfish one, and I believe that we can do better. Thank you for your time.
Welcome, sir.
Commissioners, my name is Larry Bean. I live in Billings. I've lived here for the last 30 years. Oh, I'm sorry, excuse me. B is in Bravo, E-A-N, like the vegetable. Okay. And I've lived here for the last 34 years. And let me say, I'm just very grateful that you are here and, you're taking time to listen to us. So thank you for that in advance. I'm here to express my hopes and concerns for ensuring that present and future Montanans have an energy supply that's designed with the objective of providing what is best for us and the environment we live in. Now, I've reviewed, haven't read word for word, but I've reviewed the integrated resource plan, and based on my read, it seems that even Northwest Energy, at least in other documentation that they've provided, acknowledges that fossil fuel burning has been a primary cause of climate change, in effect making summers both more hotter and drier and winters colder. The plan goes on to explain that the only logical response to these new conditions is to burn more fossil fuel. Now, on the surface, I'm not an engineer, but I have a hard time putting those two facts together. It just doesn't seem logical to me. I do understand that peaking power is needed to fill the gaps that any combination of energy that we can think of seems to have, that there's occasionally low points. But it's been rumored, at least, that Northwest Energy owns over 40 billion cubic feet of methane. So really, it shouldn't come to a surprise, that many of the conclusions of the IRP point to methane gas burning. The other options for providing peaking power in the IRP seem to be explained away, and yet the cons of methane are hardly touched on. For example, what would be the realistic worst-case scenario for generation plants that require over 1 million cubic feet per hour, that's 175 megawatt plant, being pumped into a populated area? Are there any worst-case scenarios that the public should be aware of? How do pipeline shutdowns affect the reliability of methane? What about the raw release of methane? And we know this is one of the worst climate pollutants on the planet. And for that 175 megawatt plant, the release of raw methane is over 50,000 cubic feet an hour. This is based on, by the way, reports that have been in Scientific American and reported in National Public Radio. And then also, what is the plan to reduce emissions to zero from aging infrastructure by 2050? They did answer this one in the IRP. We have no idea how we're going to do that. The options for other types of storage do not seem to be adequately addressed. And for example, we talked about pump-back storage, but I've talked with dam engineers, and the idea of actually pumping water back up into a reservoir, via renewable energy and releasing it, tell me is a completely viable idea, but nobody seems to have that one on the list of options. Battery storage, we know in the last 10 years it's just grown by leaps and bounds. And the companies that are providing this are like multi-billion-dollar corporations, Siemens, for example, providing battery storage in the up to 500 megawatt range all over the world. So it's a doable thing. Why don't we have more of it here? And on top of that, battery storage is going to be, I think, in the very near future, part of any renewable energy development. And so the reliability of renewables is going to even out over time. And again, this wasn't really factored in. We're just right on the hinge of that being well, it's actually doable right now. There are a lot of companies that are adding battery storage to their solar farms and winds and so forth. It's my understanding that the Inflation Reduction Act also is providing funding to the Department of Energy to facilitate improvements to the grid itself to improve exchange of energy between producers and users. Now, the model that the IRP is putting forward seems to be never import, only export. Now, considering that the market price for that peaking power is nearly 7 times, base power, the money-making potential of having a lot of disposable peaking power is just hard for a company like Northwestern Energy to ignore. But the question is, at whose expense? And finally, I think, what you've heard here, we're kind of all in this together. We all have an interest. And so, even asking the questions of what are we willing to do, like people in this room, to help make a safe, clean energy supply. And one example that came to mind, we talked a little earlier about California, but they have a text messaging service that has a certain amount of warning and would say, you know, we're kind of getting a little tight here, can you guys back off on using your ovens and so forth. That's already proven to almost instantaneously drop demand on those little slices of the pie where peak energy is needed. Could such tools be incorporated into our energy system to give a little extra security so we don't have complete blackouts? We all deserve the highest level of thoughtful consideration on how to have dependable energy and a clean, safe, healthy environment. I do not believe that this IRP has given us that. I thank you for your public service and for your consideration. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, please.
Thank you, Commissioners. My name is Clementine Lindley, Lindley, and I live here in Billings. I was recently on a trip to Pittsburgh visiting my sister, who's also a native Montanan, and it's a city known for its core environmental protocols. The joke among the locals is that you aren't really a Ginzer, what a native Pittsburgh local is called, unless you've gotten gonorrhea from one of the three rivers. When I shared that we as Montanans are constitutionally protected to a clean and healthful environment, the local was floored. Looking at the Northwestern Energy Plan, it seems that the executives and those in charge are looking to bring profits to the corporation and not Montanans like you or I. I recently moved to a home under the rims a few years ago. With the help of a local nonprofit, my husband and I were able to get solar panels installed. Year to date, I've generated 12 megawatt hours. Unfortunately, I can't tell you what my usage is because when I went to check, the website was down for maintenance. But I can say, if I overgenerate electricity for my home this year, Northwestern Energy isn't going to pay me for the energy I generated. Instead, I donate that energy back to the grid. Montanans take our natural resources for granted. We're used to seeing our mountains, we're used to having clean rivers, and we're used to driving our vehicles without emission dams. But all that means nothing if we're continually abusing our environment through the use of fossil fuels and continually paying more out of pocket to burn these fuels. I strongly urge you to reject this plan as it harms our environment, doesn't address climate change, and is a detriment to average Montanans' pocketbooks. I sincerely thank you for your time listening.
Thank you very much. Notice you were in the chair. If you wish to sit, I think you can.
I'm fine now.
Great.
Okay, thank you. It's pretty good, sir. I'm Carol Mick, last name is M as in Mike, I-C-K. I was right from the beginning, and I got a geology degree from Rocky Mountain College, and I was in the oil and gas industry for a while, but I also did a thesis for my degree in coal. I've got a story that when I was doing my coal thesis, I had an opportunity to go down to West Energy to Colstrip. We were having a problem because if you know anything about coal, you have to take the overburden and stockpile. EPA said you had to put it all back the way it was. And when they did that, they found out they had a lot of problems that were before they would strip the coal. The land was poor. There wasn't good grass for the cows. The wild animals weren't as good as they were elsewhere in Montana. They couldn't figure out what the problem was. They finally got a solution from MSUB, or MSU in Bozeman, and they said, we need to get a waiver, and we're going to have to mix the overburdens. When they did that, they found that there was a toxic chemistry, both, and when you put them together, they cancel each other out. A lot of that area now in Colstrip is a paradise. It's recreationally involved. The hunting is good because the animals are good. The ag, you can grow better ag and you can grow better cows. And this is an example of a business working with problems, working with the people, working with anything to solve the problem so that they can get a win-win situation. That's the kind of business that we need to remember.
That's the kind of stuff we need to do, because as long as we do that, then we won't have to have these hearings anymore. And we won't have to worry about whether our kids are gonna have to go around in hazmat suits in 20 years. And then that will include us too. I think nobody really wants to have people die because of what we put in the atmosphere. And people have got to get those dollar signs out of their eyes, because there's no money that they can put in their pocket is worth the death of a loved one. That's the bottom line. So we need to kind of start focusing our minds on getting a kind of win-win situation for businesses.
Thank you. Next speaker.
Hi. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, thank you.
My name is Katie Harrison, Harrison. I am from Billings. I was at the hearing on Monday in Great Falls on behalf of MEIC, Montana Environmental Information Center. Today I'm on behalf of myself. I did start my own organization here last year called Sustain the Billings, but I am only speaking on behalf of myself. I just wanted to be transparent. People here know that I'm with those organizations. Not today, not right now. So, as I mentioned, on Monday I went to the first of these 5 hearings in Great Falls. I found it to be very fascinating. Nice to see you again, Commissioner Panucci. There was one woman there who spoke, and she stuck out to me in particular, and she mentioned that she was a nuclear facilities engineer. And a comment that she made was that if given the choice of living next to a nuclear power plant or a wind farm, she would choose a wind farm. She also made sure to add that it distressed her greatly any mention of nuclear energy. And again, this is a nuclear facilities engineer, so that was very telling for me and struck me in particular that she made a point of saying that. So, speaking of nuclear, which I am not an expert, so this is a little difficult, but Northwestern Energy is proposing to eventually replace Colstrip with experimental nuclear technology, which is, at this time, to our knowledge, the most expensive means available to generate electricity. That technology isn't even fully developed yet, and it may not be fully developed for at least a decade, if ever. Montanans can't afford to be guinea pigs. Furthermore, radioactive waste will have to be stored on site because there is no national nuclear waste depository. That is radioactive waste. That should give everyone pause, and I believe does not belong in Northwestern's IRP. They shouldn't have anything in there that's going to potentially harm us. Also, coal ash contamination at the Colstrip plant needs to be fully cleaned up before a nuclear project can be located at that site, according to a study by the Idaho National Lab. And that cleanup work is projected to take decades. And this IRP is supposed to be for the next 20 years. So it seems to me that any plan or talk about nuclear maybe should be 20 years from now once all of this has been done. NuScale, which is an Oregon company working to create a type of small-scale reactor in Idaho, is developing one of the technologies that is being floated for the Colstrip site. NuScale recently told Utah municipalities, which have already invested $6 billion, that the cost of power will not be $58 per megawatt hour as originally projected. Instead, it will be closer to $90 to $100 per megawatt hour, and this is after tax credits. Wind and solar projects paired with storage technologies are a fraction of that ever-escalating cost of nuclear power. Okay. Before the PSC sets a utilities rate, Amongst analyzing the company's financial statements for accuracy, it must examine the company's operating practices to ensure efficiency and review known future events that may affect the business. Known future events to me is the climate crisis that we're in, the wildfires that we see raging. There was just a wildfire that struck here in Billings a couple of days ago. Thankfully, the firefighters got it out really quickly, but it burned 147 acres right at the top of Billings. That's terrifying to sit in my home and know that there's a wildfire. It could, with the heat, with the wind, it could blow through our city really quickly. So thank you to our firefighters. And as many people mentioned, the court ruling this week, the 16 kids who sued the state of Montana for the state's lack of work on keeping us all safe from pollution and the kind of disaster that we're in. The judge ruled in favor of those kids. I'm sure I'm preaching to the choir. We all know this, but I just want to go on record and congratulate those children. They're working their butts off to make sure that they have a safe and healthy planet to live in when they grow up. It's our job to make sure that that happens for them. Kids shouldn't have to be suing their governments right now. Think about that. And it's happening all over the world. I'm going to try to wrap up. Today, coincidentally, marks 1 year since President Biden signed the Inflation Reduction Act. I found that to be, as my boyfriend mentioned, poetic, but I felt very serendipitous. 1 year today. We should be celebrating the fact that the most significant climate law in American history was passed today, which will provide game-changing tax credits for clean energy manufacturing and rebates for Americans to make their homes and businesses more energy efficient. That's on energy.gov. I believe that this IRP does not provide for us to take advantage of those tax credits by investing in energy that has now been ruled in our state of Montana to be unconstitutional to invest in, thanks to those 16 kids. I'm going to wrap up. I beg that you please think forward 20 years from now and the impact that all these decisions you are about to make will make on our future generations as well as our planet, and take this amazing opportunity that you all have here to make sure that our constitutional rights are upheld. And thank you all very much.
Thank you. Senator Berry? Supervisor Berry?
Good evening. My name is Tom Berry, B-E-R-R-Y. I live here in Billings. I just want to say that I embrace renewable energy. In fact, I'm working on a solar energy project myself right now. However, I really am concerned about the demand. There's more and more people moving into Montana all the time. And can we keep up with the demand with just solar and wind and renewables? I really am concerned about that. I went to an energy conference this week, and I was talking to a gentleman, and he said right now there's roughly 3,500 electric vehicles in the state of Montana. By 2030, there's going to be 30,000 electric vehicles in the state of Montana. That's going to be a big demand on our energy system. So with the peak energy demands, I just want to make sure we have enough power. So when I hit my thermostat, it's going to be there. I have energy for my children and my grandchildren. So I guess I'm not totally against this energy proposal. And I just want to make sure the demand is there, and I am for all forms of energy. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next speaker.
Hello, my name is Karen Steers, S-T-E-A-R-S. I live here in Billings. I'm a Northwestern energy ratepayer. I appreciate you being here and taking the time to hear us. Northwestern Energy's 20-year plan is absurd. It's absurd. We are in the middle of a climate crisis, and this plan of Northwestern Energy does nothing to address that. The plan is to burn more fossil fuels through coal and natural gas and exacerbate the problem. Federal government is heading the other direction, is requesting that all of our, at least states do as well. This fossil fuel centric plan is only going to increase climate warming and the gases it emits. It's going to continue to pollute the air we breathe. In fact, the methyl plant in Laurel that is proposed would make Laurel and Billings sacrifice zones. The air quality as a result of the emissions from these plants is untenable. Tons of formaldehyde will be emitted into the atmosphere. We will be forced to breathe formaldehyde. There are no safe levels of formaldehyde. It is a known carcinogen, in addition to benzene and methane and increasing particulate matter. We will be forced to breathe carcinogens. I find that untenable. There are no safe levels of these. In addition, these plants in this carbon-centric plan will increase our utility rates to a level that are unaffordable by most Montanans. There are several studies out that compare the cost per kilowatt hour of energy generation. And peaker gas plants are one of the most expensive ways to generate peak electricity. There are so many available options for clean energy with wind, solar, battery storage, of which there are batteries now that can hold up to 50 megawatts of electricity and be available for peak dispersion. These are the safest ways to generate electricity for Montana. Many utilities in the USA are adding more clean energy. Xcel Energy this week put out a request for proposal for 650 megawatts of clean energy to replace a coal energy plant that they are retiring in Wisconsin and Minnesota. That's Xcel Energy. There is incredible opportunity, as was just illustrated. This is the 1-year anniversary of the Inflation Reduction Act. We can take advantage of this federal money. In fact, Northwest Energy can take advantage of this money to help pay for solar, wind, battery, geothermal, all clean energy. They can get money to build these plants. And in addition, they can get paid per kilowatt hour that they generate. They can make an additional profit on. I didn't see any of that in their IRP. It's an incredible opportunity to take advantage of that. I am the proud mother of 3 children who are in their 20s, and none of them have hope for their future. In fact, they are not planning to have families, despite their desire to do so, because they feel their future is very bleak. And so I am here speaking on their behalf to urge you, Public Service Commission, to act on our behalf, on our children's behalf, on the next generation, on their behalf. We have an opportunity here to ask you to mandate at Northwest Energy commit to a goal of 0 carbon emissions by 2030, to take advantage of all of these opportunities right now. Those 16 young people stood up really on our behalf for the mistakes that we've made. They had to fight for their right, a constitutional right for a clean and healthy environment going forward. Be with you to support all of our constitutional rights, future generations, to a clean and healthy environment. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Welcome.
Well, thank you. Welcome to you. Welcome to Billings.
Well, I live here.
Well, good evening. My name is Molly Bell, and I'm here today on behalf of Montana conservation voters. Overall, I'm concerned with the IRP's ability to provide affordable services to Montanans while also protecting Montana's clean air. Rather than lean into new technologies that will reduce costs and air pollution in the long and short term, Northwestern insists on staying in the path with proposals to maintain and increase reliance on dirty energy. This IRP is a missed opportunity to provide Montanans with energy freedom and to outline how the state can justly transition from dirty and costly energy production to a clean energy future.
This is particularly notable as today, as others have mentioned, is the one-year anniversary of the Inflation Reduction Act, a bill that is intended to accelerate the deployment of cost-effective clean energy. Federal funds from the IRA and the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act can be leveraged to develop energy efficiency, renewable energy sources, transmission lines, and storage. Northwestern failed to account for trillions of dollars of federal funding from these bills. This funding could be utilized to ensure that jobs are not lost, but are transitioned into the clean energy economy. By failing to consider these funds and how developing clean energy would benefit residents through reduced rates and cleaner air, Northwestern failed at its task to outline how it would provide affordable and reliable electricity to its customers. As others have noted as well, this week a judge found that the state of Montana has violated young Montanans' constitutional right to a clean and healthful environment by promoting and permitting the fossil fuel industry. As a publicly elected body which is responsible for regulating Northwestern Energy, it is imperative that you take this into account when considering this IRP. Based on this court decision, the state is required to consider greenhouse gas emissions when approving projects, meaning that Northwestern's direction as outlined in the current IRP is not likely to move forward. So instead of trying to force this direction, Northwestern should take a step back and make sure they are considering energy projects that will actually benefit Montanans' pocketbooks and their health. Finally, with current proposed federal regulations that would limit toxic air pollutants, coal ash, and greenhouse gas emissions, Northwestern's plans to continue producing energy with current means will become increasingly costly to ratepayers and run contrary to the state's responsibility to preserve a clean and healthful environment. Thank you for your time and consideration. And I should have said I'm from Billings as well, so maybe I'll see you around.
It's amazing, Billings is not that large, but you can not run into somebody you know for 10 years.
Yeah. It's good and bad, you know?
Senator, please.
Welcome, Commissioners. Can you hear me?
Yes, indeed.
Yes, I'm Mary McNally, MCNALLY. I am a former legislator, and I served for 12 years in both the House and the Senate. I was on the Energy Committee that entire time. So, seen a number of these IRPs, and I've also witnessed Northwestern Energy and Colstrip and the Capitol Shuttle for a long time. Shuttle. We went around almost every session. There was something going on. I think 2 years ago we were going to buy shares of Colstrip for $1. And now it's quote unquote free. So I'm just going to focus on, I think there's been plenty said today and people have been very articulate about some of their concerns. I was going to focus on just two things. And one of them is this ongoing push to acquire more of Colstrip, the existing. And in this IRP, by the way, I'm taking my own advice and trying to stick to the IRP. In this IRP, it assumes that the acquisition of Avista's 220 megawatt share is a done deal. At least that's my reading of it. And that resource is built into the base of the plant. The company is claiming it's a free asset, and I don't believe that this IRP reflects any of the real costs involved with this idea. So, for example, part of the most recent rate case, Northwestern Energy said it needs $66 million each year for operation and maintenance, taxes, and coal costs with existing 3% share. Well, now we're getting another 30% share. They're doubling their share. There are no additional costs in this plan. So I don't know how they expect. I would assume you could maybe safely assume that's another $66 million. Well, where is it in the plan? I mean, that should be a built-in cost. And I'm assuming, but if I couldn't find it, and wouldn't it be prudent to include that additional cost? I mean, shouldn't that be mandatory? But it's obviously foreseeable. They've already built it into their plan, and there's nothing there. And that doesn't include any additional costs. So, for example, Avista said that they were expecting an additional, I think, $16 million for
their share of capital expenses and investment. That's not in here. I mean, maybe this is gonna pay it on the way out the door, I don't know. But there's, none of this stuff is showing up. So I'm very skeptical of the numbers that we're getting. I find it really hard to believe. And we're not hearing anything about additional unknown costs, for example, coal ash disposal. You know, Vista is responsible up to a point. If Northwestern takes this over, they'll be responsible going forward. Where are those costs? So all this talk about new free asset and what a great deal this is all on the back of the ratepayers. You can see it coming, and there's nothing in here about it. So I find that very troubling. I'm also continually amazed by Northwestern Energy's ability to create scenarios where fossil fuel resources are the only possible alternative. And, many other utilities, and some have been mentioned, Excel, and plenty of other utilities have figured out how to incorporate more renewables. And they are workable, and it's being done. It's not being done here. And we are the state now, the only utility, I think, that is actually increasing our share of coal. Everybody else is going the other way. Not us. But anyway, that said, I looked up today, in fact, I brought it, Lazard's levelized cost of energy analysis. To get a comparison of the cost of renewables versus their chart here, because I'm sure you've all seen it, but if people in the audience haven't, it's one of the best sources of information to compare the various costs of different energy technologies. So the most expensive at the moment, according to this, is gas peaking. That's what's going up in the world. That is the most expensive. This is from April 2023. Their costs are range from estimate from 115 to 221. Second most expensive, or right up there with it, is nuclear, and everybody's just guessing on what that might be. Nobody knows. That has been pointed out. The Energy Committee during the last session, or the last interim, not this past, but I was chairing it, and we took a trip down to Idaho State Labs to look at all modular reactors. And there was a study that came out of that. There's good information about it, but that technology is way out there, and it's not deployable, and it doesn't make any sense to think that that's going to be a solution in any midterm scenario for Holster. That's the story. Cheapest, one of the cheapest sources is solar PV and storage at utility scale. That's $46 to $102. And the second cheapest is wind and storage. That's $42 to $114. So we have well-recognized people, experts in this. This levelized cost, by the way, don't include any of the subsidies that have been mentioned that are now available through FET. This is unsubsidized. These are some of the least expensive sources of generation, and they're nowhere. We don't see them. We never see them here. And instead, we're getting some of the most expensive gas peaking and coal. Dreams about nuclear down the road. So I'm skeptical. I wish that there had been more follow-up. I think it was the synergy study of the last IRP looking at the black box where we get the simulation and the outcome. Reminds me of the old saying back in the early days of the computer, garbage in, garbage out. I mean, that study did show that there were some real problems with what we ended up with. And I see us looking at the same black box. And I'm glad there's going to be some follow-up. But I'd like to see follow-up on follow-up. If you find it different, more transparency in how this stuff is being looked at, the public. I mean, it's hard for us to know. So, I guess I'm asking the PSC to do its job and provide some critical oversight into these sorts of studies and protect the ratepayer, number one. And also, I do think we could have a more forward-looking, futuristic, oriented approach to looking at energy policy. I feel like we're looking in the rearview mirror. I think this IRP just shows that. So, okay, thank you.
Thank you, Senator. I wanted to say, my personal regard for Senator McNally. I don't know how many interim committees there are, but I think she was on all of them. I'm sure you remember all of them. The most hardworking legislator I've ever come across. Thank you. Yes, sir. Welcome.
Thank you, Commissioners. My name is Steve Crum, KRUM. I live in Laurel, across from this proposed, this plant Northwestern building, and I do oppose it completely. I'm a retired refinery worker, and one of the concerns I have over this IRP is coal strip. Coal strip has been stated in the paper that the plant that's walking away from this plant says it's at end of run. That means it's at the end of its design run period, which I don't believe they completely rebuilt it to hand it over to Northwestern. So when a plant's at the end of run, that means there's a lot of expenses that are going to be needed to continue to run and operate this plant without complete rebuild. And to rebuild a plant like this completely is very expensive. And who's going to pay for that? I don't believe it's going to be the shareholders, and I do believe they'll be knocking on your door asking for money to cover these costs. And it sounds like, based on what the Senator just said, is that they're already paying $66 million a year for a plant that's at the end of run, and it's only 20%. And in the proposal for these new gas plants that they're building one in Laurel, they're estimating $60 million a year just at operating expenses. So there's a lot of money that's going to have to be paid, and who's going to pay that? Is it going to be the ratepayers? So I truly believe that the expenses that Northwestern are looking for here are for profits for their shareholders. They're not taking into consideration ratepayers. Everything in this plan is burning fossil fuel. Everything they're doing here is expensive to operate. Everything in this plan has high maintenance costs. The payback on these plants is 30 years. That's their plan. The payback on a windmill, if you look it up, is about 6 months at 60% efficiency, something like that. So the ratepayers, there's a reason why the cost for green energy is cheaper, because it is less expensive to everyone, including the people that build it. So we are depending on you, the PSC, to protect us. We're here asking you to look and listen to what we have to say and let Northwestern know that they're not going down the path of the future. They're going down a rabbit hole into the past just to make a lot of money for their shareholders, for themselves, at the cost of Montana, its beauty. Why would you build a plant like this right next to Yellowstone River? Why would anybody do that? Yellowstone is Montana. And look at that ugly old plant sitting down there already. That's terrible. That's just terrible. And then the other thing I'd like to bring up is we keep hearing these scare tactics of peak demand, peak demand. Are they saying, you need to define that. Are they saying, and I would ask you to ask this, are they saying if they didn't go out and pay $4.7 million, then the lights would go out in buildings? That's not what they're saying. I've read what Hines has said in the paper, is that no, there's no shortage of electricity. The power is on the grid. The fact is they just have to buy it. But if you do the math and look at the cost of these plants and do the math of the $4.7 million in the winter on peak demand to provide what they don't have right now for us, and the $4.7 million in the summer when it's really hot, we're talking less than $10 million. Each one of these plants is $30 million just at the get-go for property taxes and interest to pay for them, let alone the profits that the PSC builds into it, let alone the $60 million, let alone the plant that is at end of run, that is going to have unknown, enormous potential expenses because it's at end of design run. The ratepayers shouldn't be getting into this. They should stay out of it. So Appreciate you for listening. Thank you.
Thank you. Other speaker? Oh, yes, please. Welcome.
Mr. Chair, members of the commission, my name is Carrie Kimball, that's spelled Kimball, and I am actually a Helena resident and Northwestern Energy ratepayer there, but I grew up in the Billings area, and I'm actually representing the Montana Environmental Information Center. Just wanted to open by saying thank you for expanding the number of meetings to speak with you folks. Really appreciate this opportunity to make our voices heard. So as you folks know, the IRP is supposed to be generated every 3 years to provide that 20-year perspective of how we're getting our energy. Frankly, we're not here to talk about the rate case. And also, maybe some of the reason we're looking at such a huge rate case right now is because the previous planning sessions didn't go as well as they should. The plans that Northwestern Energy generated weren't as predictive of what rising costs of fuel are going to be looking like for the next 20 years. And so that's why we know that good planning now is going to lead to ratepayers paying lower costs of energy down the road. So thank you for doing an exhaustive process. We hope that you'll look at what Northwestern Energy is giving you with a real grain of salt. As you know, they're looking out for their shareholders first and foremost, and we're hoping you can look out for the ratepayers first and foremost and our environment. So good planning is essential. And one of the things I just want to talk about again is this bigger interest in Colstrip that they have proposed. The other ownership entities at Colstrip have really looked at these costs pretty extensively too. And many of them are exiting the plant, not just because of state government requirements, but also because they found that the sooner that they get out of that Colstrip plant, the more they're going to save their customers money. And so these lifeboats are ready. Here's an opportunity for us to look forward and plan progressively. And unfortunately, Northwestern Energy, it looks like they're, trusting that the Public Service Commission will just let them charge whatever they want for these Colstrip costs. Here are some of the things in the IRP that are missing that we really need to know so that we can fairly evaluate how much energy from Colstrip is going to cost us. How much it costs to operate and maintain a plant each year, how much it costs to buy coal from the Rosebud mine, which has been open for 50 years. Year after year, they're extracting the readily available coal that is highest value. So the coal that they're able to extract becomes more and more expensive and less available to them. That's going to mean that their coal contract at Northwestern, that the plant needs to renegotiate in 2025, that coal plant is going to have higher coal costs. So we can see how these costs to run this plant are just going to continue to grow and grow and grow. As we know, Northwestern Energy already owns 220 megawatts. They want to buy, another 220 megawatts of that plant from Avista for $0. But here are some of the costs that, because of the recent rate case, we know Northwestern Energy is already paying for their existing share. Operation and maintenance costs are about $23 million a year, so that amount would double. Taxes are about $10 million a year, so those costs, we can anticipate those would double. The coal costs, $36 million a year, that would double, and that's before we're talking about that 2025 coal contract renegotiation process that we need to take into account. So that's, before we consider the added coal costs, that's about $132 million each year for a plant. So this is not a free plant. The upfront costs might be very low, but the ongoing costs to ratepayers like myself, other folks in this room, are going to be exponentially bigger. As other folks mentioned, that doesn't include costly repairs that are often needed to maintain the 40-year-old asset. Additionally, the EPA is considering stricter air pollution control. If we're going to consider that has also another avenue that would cause the Colstrip operating costs to increase if they need to install the sort of modern air pollution monitoring that other coal plants in the U.S. already have. So basically, you know, we're looking at you, we're asking you to take a really critical eye to this plan. We'd love it if you could respond critically and really encourage them to more fully account for these huge costs that coal and gas cost ratepayers. And we're thankful for the time.
Thank you. One more speaker, please.
I needed all that time to put my thoughts together.
I'm the same way myself.
I got it on my notes. My name is Virginia Duke, D-U-K-E. I'm a resident of Billings, and I grew up here as well. And thank you for taking the time to listen and comment on the others in the room. I am frustrated that this integrated resource plan does not include investments in renewable energy resources and instead doubles down on coal and other high emission strategies, ignoring the very real threats our state faces caused by climate change. This proposed plan will also increase energy rates for me and my husband, a very average Montana family. Were this rate increase going to translate into environmentally responsible energy development, we would shoulder the additional cost burden as necessary, even if it was challenging. However, increasing our rates only to see them go toward fossil fuel development is infuriating. My husband and I would like to start a family someday, and yet it's hard to consider bringing a child into this world when the health and safety of our planet feels so tenuous. I want my children to grow up in a clean and healthful environment. But I fear that our state decision makers and companies don't have the same priorities. I urge the Public Service Commission to hold Northwestern accountable to developing a plan that goes in the right direction, away from fossil fuels and toward renewable energy in a safe and healthy future for our children. Thank you.
Thank you. Oh, welcome. Please come.
Hello, Commissioners. My name is Mary Catherine Dunphy. That's spelled D-U-N-P-H-Y. I live in Miles City, Montana. And I'm grateful that you're all listening to all these comments, and I hope you'll take them very seriously, except for a couple of them.
We take all comments.
The last time I was here was in January of 2020. You may wonder, being that I'm from Miles City, why I am here. I am an asthmatic and I live downwind and downstream. So due to their travel, maybe it won't be as high concentrations in Miles City as it will be in Laurel, for example. But back in January 2020 when we met, I think it was just you at the library in Billings, Commissioner O'Donnell. I mentioned that, the climate emergency was happening then, and the terrible fires that just happened in Australia, and 3 billion animals perished at that time. And now here we are, 3 years later, we've had hurricanes and more fires, the latest being the horrible one last week in Hawaii. It's supposed to be a paradise. There, John Milton wrote a book, or a poem, Paradise Lost. That's what's happened, in part. I read today in the New York Times that 106 people have been publicly identified. All but 4 burned beyond recognition. They're bringing in DNA specialists, forensic anthropologists, 20 cadaver dogs, and 20-ton mobile morgue. That's the climate emergency this week, or last week. What is it going to be next week? Next year? The year after that? And that's why I'm against Northwest Energy Integrated Resource Plan, which focuses on fossil fuels. Because the climate scientists have been warning us for years, that we are headed for catastrophe. And people make fun of Al Gore when he started talking about this in 1988. But I don't think they're making so much fun of them now. They're now talking about climate refugees. And that may be one of the reasons property values are going up in Montana. It's a little cooler here than in Arizona this summer, where children, when they fell on the asphalt, got third-degree burns and had to go to the hospital. Hospitals were overwhelmed. So Northwest Energy, with this integrated resource plan, is dealing in death and destruction. You know, if you take the addiction model, the doctors who deal with drug addicts and alcoholics, denial is a big part of the problem. And breaking through that denial is really important in terms of recovery. I think Northwest Energy is in denial about the climate emergency. How could they possibly want to build a power plant like this one in Laurel, which will emit 800 tons of greenhouse gases? Not to mention, which the doctors, who Dr. Byron spoke and others have spoken about, the benzene, formaldehyde, nitrogen, sulfur, particulate matters. It's all toxic. And we have to break away from this model of generating electricity. Xcel Energy, one of the biggest utilities in the country, is committed to going completely carbon-free by 2050 and 80% carbon-free by 2030. That's not going to be happening in Montana with Northwest Energy integrated resource plan. So, in closing, I just want to say that Northwest Energy to me is like a drug dealer, and we're hooked. We don't have a choice. We're hooked by on the kinds of dirty energy that they're proposing, and that's why, given the climate emergency and everything the climate scientists have said, and also the recent ruling in Cal versus Montana, I urge the Public Service Commissioner to deny this plan, and I'll be submitting more detailed comments in writing. Thank you.
Oh, Mr. Speaker, yes, please, come forward. Welcome.
My name is Priscilla Bell, B as in boy, E-L-L.
Bell from Ray. This is wonderful.
And I'm from Laurel. I have agreed so much with everything everyone has said, except for one gentleman. I'm sure you know which one that was. So I don't want to repeat all of that. So I'm just encouraging Northwestern Energy to build clean going forward to stop the nonsense in Laurel, to avoid any new fossil fuel development at all in the state of Montana. I still ride my bike. It's electric. It's wonderful. I ride out west of Laurel and down on highways and everything. On the mornings I cannot see the mountains, which is increasingly seems to be the case because the pollution is so bad I can no longer see the mountains. Some days I cannot see the rims. And so you can't ride your bike when it's like that because you're just getting all that gunk in your lungs and your lungs do not expel it. And so I too am begging you, pleading to do something. I've been to so many of these meetings since this all came up with the plant in Laurel. I've listened to so many wonderful talks by people, heartfelt, crying, people really intense about this nonsense going away, and nothing happens. Nothing. So I don't understand what government's about if it doesn't listen to the people. And I'm asking you to listen, not only listen, but do something about it. Scripture says, listen, hear, but that means do something. Doesn't mean just open your ears. So, thank you very much. You've been great.
Thank you very much. So we, our agreement with the early dashboard is that we can use this room for 6 o'clock till 8 o'clock. As you can see, it is 25 seconds after 8 o'clock right now. Is there anybody who actually wishes to, actually needs to add anything new to this? No. Okay.
Very briefly, I forgot to add this because it's very important. 150 years ago this week, Chief Blackfoot of the Crow tribe stated, and I quote, "The earth on which we walk, from which we come, and which we love as our mother, which we love as our country, we ask you to see that we do that which is good for us and our children." This was 150 years ago, and I just hope that we carry that in our hearts today. Thank you.
Is this actually necessary, ma'am? Can you repeat? You gonna add something new? Please be brief.
My name is Joan Smith, and I would be happy to help customers learn how to use less energy, because really, we overuse, and much of it, we don't need it. It would be better for our health.
Thank you very much.
Lots of good ideas on
So remember, in terms of comments, we have another 2 hearings, and you can participate in them through Zoom or telephone calls. So to respect our agreement with the host of this building, we need to adjourn the meeting now. It is now 8:03, I think, from here. And thank you very, very much. Again, I wanted to reiterate something I said before, is that it's all comments seriously, and we will pursue many of the points that were brought up. Thank you very much for your attendance.